Hi, you guys, and welcome back to another episode of Breakthrough with me, your host, Tess Timmons. In today's episode, we are not only talking to a published author, but hearing about her book, and maybe you're interested in becoming a published author too. So stay tuned, like, subscribe, share this with other people that you know who are writers, authors, and people who love to read. Today, we are welcoming Nashae Jones to our episode. Nashae, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's good to see you again.
Yes, I really am a big fan of your podcast, so thank you for having me on.
Thank you. On one of the episodes of Breakthrough, I talked about your book and several other books that I'm teaching at school. And audience, it was so cool to talk with Nashae. I dropped it into her DMs of Instagram. We started talking, and now my students are reading her book and planning on interviewing her. So come what may of like putting it out there, and I don't know, it's really cool to see that dreams come true. And it's really inspiring my students to not only read, which is key, but to know that they can reach out to someone and get heard. So that's really cool. Thank you, Nashae, for that.
No, you're so welcome. Thank you for doing that for your kids. That's a huge thing that you've done for the students, and I don't think that's anything they'll ever forget.
Yeah, cool. So you have written a new book and you're doing a massive tour. So thanks for fitting us into your schedule. And I'm wondering if you could tell us what the book is about, what genre it is. And I was also wondering if there's any former characters that will be entering the scene.
Absolutely. So I have a copy of the advanced reader copy here. It is called As You Wish. And As You Wish is about actually a character from my previous book, Courtesy of Cupid, Birdie. And that is the protagonist of Courtesy of Cupid's cousin. And she just really wants to be normal. She's going into her eighth grade year. She has a very overprotective mom who has general anxiety disorder. And she loves her mom, but she knows that a lot of that gets in the way of what she considers being quote unquote normal. So she feels like she's bringing her best friend Davy down because she feels like Davy would be popular if it wasn't for all of the stuff that goes on with her. So when she meets Anansi, a West African spider god, she decides to make wishes to try to make everything better in her life, which and it's very much say be careful what you wish for, trope. Nancy in this book comes back as the form of a 13-year-old girl, Nancy, who is in debt to her, and Nancy is in debt to her family from a long time ago. So,
Ooh, it sounds like multiple storylines that intertwine. This is really cool. When you're thinking about young adult characters and this anxiety disorder, are you researching that? Are you finding that that is more common since COVID or social media? Or why did you choose that as part of your protagonist's story?
for me, I have anxiety, and depression should be linked together. And a lot of that is I had like, how do I feel like I can, as a mom, how does that bleed over into my children? And it was a lot of honest, authentic looking at myself. There was a lot of research into the disorder because my experiences isn't everybody's experience. And I wanted to give a voice to those parents and people who deal with that, but still have to be parents and how that bleeds over into their parenting. Um, but also wanted to look at it from the lens of a 13 or 14-year-old who um, might not have the whole story. And because parents tend to just give kids what a little bit at a time and try to hold the burden mostly for themselves. So I really wanted to do something like that when it came to anxiety and the parent child relationship.
Oh, that's a really good part to analyze as well. Like how much as parents do we protect, or we think we're protecting, and maybe it's actually creating another burden.
Yeah.
Sounds like this book could be read not only by young adult teenagers, but this could be a good pairing of parents and children reading it together.
I
And
hope
having a really
so.
cool conversation about that.
Yeah, I hope so. That's what I hope. I hope that having like a lot of with the two books, I really do like concentrating on that parent child relationship and like even though it is a rom com, quote unquote a rom com, it kind of centers on all relationships during this time period as being really important and vital to who the child is, or the young adult.
Yeah, I noticed that in your first novel as well, that there's a lot of complexity going on with many characters and storylines, mother and child, uh, friendships, also love interests. So it's really cool that every character has a storyline. It's not just centered on one thing. It's real life. Yeah, that's great. When does this book come out, and where can we get a copy of it?
January 14th is the date that As You Wish comes out. I'm a huge proponent of indie bookstores. You can get it at any of your big box stores. But I do have a special pre-order campaign with Fountain Bookstore. So the pre-order campaign, if you pre-order with them, you do get a bonus chapter courtesy of Cupid where Aaron meets her father.
Oh, cool. Okay, audience, you got to check that out. We'll put details in the show notes and links as well, so you can get a hold of that too. I also want to mention, like, I think it's great that you are vulnerable in speaking about anxiety as well. I think we all go through it to some extent of um, feeling anxious about the future, or sometimes holiday parties to the season, right? And joining people. So yeah, I appreciate that. And when you're talking about spiders and mystical creatures, like I recently was in Costa Rica and have been reading about also Afro-Caribbean culture, Jamaican culture, and spiders. What inspired the spider in your story?
I have from a very early age loved fairy tales and folklore and different types of fairy tales or mythology from different countries. So this one in particular is a West African trickster spider, trickster god, and I was really honed in on trickster gods. I loved Brer Rabbit and Loki. Um, like I always love that space in between the morally gray. I'm doing things, but it's not necessarily for the greater good. It's not necessarily because I'm evil. I'm just doing it because I'm chaotic. Especially as a child, I love those things. Um, so I knew about it at sea. And he's always been one of my favorites. And I've always wanted to write a story where I integrate him into um sort like into not just a middle grader or young adult, but some type of story in a fun way that doesn't isn't necessarily how he's been portrayed before. And I think one of the main things I really like turning him into like a relatable 13-year-old girl, like the protagonist, kind of in the way Bedazzle did with the movie where they had the Lucifer character was turned into a girl. And it was a Brendan. It was an old movie, and then it was like another. It was Brendan Fraser did a remake of it with Elizabeth. I can't remember, but
Oh,
it's like it just keeps making wishes, and it keeps getting worse and worse and worse because it keeps messing. You keep messing. The trickster god wants to create chaos, and in the end, they finally realize that this is not magic. Isn't what's going to solve. I have to solve things in my real life problems. So, um,
mm.
I think I went off on a tangent, but just,
No, I love it. It also shows us like where your brain goes as an artist, and your research, your experience in life, and your passions, and how you can weave all of that together. I think that's beautiful. Yeah, that's really cool. And I think that message in the end, right? I can't rely on other things. I have to rely on myself. Um,
yes.
what made you choose young adult as your topic for writing?
So I am in a really special space also, that is upper middle grade, young adult. Um, I don't see there aren't a lot of books dedicated to that space. There are now. There's this huge movement of upper middle grade making a comeback. And that's that space for kids who aren't really wanting to read the younger middle grade books. Like they've kind of grown up further than that, but they also aren't ready to jump into the like the young adult books with topics they really don't have context to enjoy. Um, so I really wanted to write in a space for upper middle grade, that 10 to 14 age range. To give those kids kind of like a bridge up to the upper young adult and adult books. I I think that is the time, when I was younger, when I really got hooked as a reader. Um, and I really have this passion for really trying to make kids who are going to become lifelong readers. I think reading is such a pivotal skill, like, that we need, even just for relaxation, but for information, all of these things. So making lifelong readers is very important to me.
Yes. Well, as a teacher, I love you for that. And it's proven. Like when I was reading, I had all of my students read a variety of books the first couple of pages, first 3 to 5 pages. And your book was definitely a hook. Many people in class were raising their hand. I want to read that first. I want to read that first. So you've got it. I would agree with you. Like lifelong reading is so important in helping our brains grow and developing vocabulary so we can understand ourselves. There's so many reasons um, to enjoy reading and any type of reading. Like I tell my students too, like get a magazine if you're not into novels yet. And then just as a teacher, I think you're spot on. There's like Dogman and Diary of a Wimpy Kid, and then there was kind of a gap of where do readers go next, right? Not only that, but I think too, readers looking for characters like themselves. And you do a great job of making sure that there's a diverse group of ethnicities in your characters, which I think is huge, especially as a teacher looking at audiences and looking at teenagers, who is their protagonist. So thank you so much for that. It's great.
Thank you. And that is really super important to me. Like being able, as a kid who was like that, and not in reading and loving Nancy Drew and the Boxcar Children and all these different stories, but not really having a whole lot of protagonists that looked like me. Um, and if they did, it was typically a story about either civil rights or slavery, and not having those lighthearted stories for kids that of color was pretty important for me.
Yeah, it's so important. Yeah, I remember like Amelia Bedelia, Beverly Cleary, but they all looked more like me. But yes, if we don't have stories of joy with students, with all students, and that's the only story told, yes, that's not going to work. It's not going to help them dream and be positive. So thank you for being a writer.
Thank you.
When I'm going to bend back to your first book, Courtesy of Cupid. I've read that one, and obviously, just from our conversation right now, it's inspired a lot of my students. When you're writing that book, well, first of all, like I bought a purchased copy of that book, and then started talking to you on Instagram. And then, Nashae, you do a beautiful job of marketing. My students were researching all of the authors because I chose authors who are alive today currently. And they looked at everyone's social media. They loved watching your reels. You had one where you were singing a song. Oh, I forget what it was, but they were loving it. And I was like, look at the marketing as it's really drawing you in. In with Nashae, she had the second book, the soft cover of Courtesy of Cupid that came out, and you did a live drawing, and my name got called, which was crazy because I only have one copy of the book. We are a Title I school, and our budget only goes so far. So I have many students again who are raising their hand. I want to read it. So then that book was shipped to me as well. The soft cover. Do you have a copy with you? It
I,
is so gorgeous how you have the artwork on the side. Did you design that or how did that idea come about?
no, I didn't actually. This is a publisher who did this. I can't. It's always been a dream. I love sprayed edges, and I mean, I've never thought with middle grade, upper middle grade, young adult that I would have sprayed edges. But this was just a special edition for the paper. Just it was a really nice surprise to know that I was getting. And so I did want to market it. I did want to give some copies away. I'm still sending some more copies away to a couple of Title I schools out here. Cool. But yeah, it's so like it's such a pretty color, and it's only listen, I was like, I love hardback books. I do. Just because they last longer on shelves, like library shelves and things like that.
Sure.
But I am a big proponent of affordability and for kids to be able to afford books. And I think having paperback and having them, under $10 is a great way to do versus. So I love paperback.
I love that too in many ways. Like, not only is it gorgeous with the hearts on the side, but if a student puts it back on the shelf backwards, you can find it. I love it. And for so many reasons, but yeah, that's really cool. In Crazy of Cupid, you have so much research in there. Like, I didn't know who Marie Curie, I don't know if I'm saying her name right.
Yeah.
Uh, how do you say it?
No, you said it right.
Okay. Like, she was a scientist from way back, and she was like curing diseases or whatever. And she's your protagonist, one of your protagonist heroes. Did you naturally know about her, or as a writer, does your protagonist inspire you to research, or are you putting that together? Which we're kind of hearing similarly to your other book, how your passions drove the spider character. But
Oh yeah, I had to do research on Marie Curie, and anything science related in that book was 100% researched because um a lot of it I really love how girls are getting more into science and male dominated fields, and my character kind of drove that for me. She wants to be the first Black woman to win the Nobel Prize in medicine, all these different things. So it kind of drove me along to try to do research, like what are the appropriate things? What do they study in eighth grade typically? So I actually talked to the middle school teachers here who does science and looked at some lessons and what is the typical for a student who does honors biology versus regular biology, and what are some of these competitive programs. So it was definitely Aaron who drove me. I am no I couldn't even cut the frog open when I was in high school. Like, and this is before I'm aging myself, but this is before they had like the computer programs where you can do it instead. So I
right.
just sit out because it wasn't even a frog, it was a pig. It was like a tiny pig. Not up the open porky pig. So, but it just yeah, I'm definitely more like protagonist in this book. As You Wish, Birdie, or than I am Aaron. Aaron is probably my polar opposite. When I was a kid, I was very flighty, ADHD, just very much like kind of off in the clouds, but and Aaron's very driven. So there's a
It
lot of
actually is.
yeah.
That's interesting because sometimes as authors, we might pull from people that we know or from ourselves, but it's cool that she is coming to you and is completely different than you. That's neat. So that's really interesting too, how you go and talk to different teachers, figure out what's being studied at that time. When you look at, well, I guess you have your own children too. Are they teenagers as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
So my oldest is 18 and my youngest is 13. So
Okay. So you've got live research right in front of you as well.
I
Um,
do.
I was wondering, I was wondering that too because your books are written effortlessly and you have like teen language, but it's not trying too hard. I don't know how to really best describe that, but the students were really enjoying it. And when we look at like language as well, and currently how language is flowing, I find it fascinating. Like the other day, a student came into my classroom and said hi to Damien, and Damien said like, "Oh, are you cooking today?" And they high fived, and then I asked Damien like, "What does it mean to you?" And so to them it means like, "Hi, how are you doing? Hope you're having a great day." But then when I hear like an interview that a millennial was talking about with cooking, she was talking about being an actress and she didn't get that role yet, but she was still researching, still cooking, still simmering on her ideas. And so it's interesting how language trickles down to different generations and means different things, but also how fast language is going. Because like Riz was cool a couple months ago, but now it's not. And then the moment teachers or adults start saying it, they dump it right away. How do you keep up with all of this?
I I try to do some timeless language, like things that transcend trends because it takes at a minimum a year for a book to be published from the time it's written. until the time it is published. And that is if you already are with an editor and it's a book that's coming out. Um, like all the stuff has already been done. If you're looking for an editor and you just started with an editor, it takes 2 years for a book. So putting in something like if she's clicking or she's crashing out. That's the new one. My son keeps saying you're gonna make me crash out. Um, it's so hard to do that because it's changing. I'm even thinking now that I can't like we are cautious now about putting in social media names. Like I didn't in my new book, social media plays a factor, but I made up a name for social media versus using an actual platform.
Oh,
Because there is the threat that TikTok is I might get banned. So, and by the time the book comes out, we might, have generations of kids who might not even know it. Um,
that's a good point. I mean, even looking at like football stadiums that get renamed now with Invesco Field was I was born and raised in Denver, so it has changed a certain amount of times, and I'm like, should have just kept it Mile High, man. That's smart. That's a really good point as an author as well. How do I keep my book timeless instead of just catchy at this moment and thinking of the long haul? Oh, interesting. Maybe any other thoughts about being a writer? I was thinking of Anne Rice, and she when she writes a book, she would take pieces of paper and put them up throughout a room in her house so that she could see her timeline. I found that fascinating. Are there any other quirky things that you do or things that you think of to get your book out or
oh, I love it. I love her. Yes. And it was a trial and error thing with me. One thing that I have found that I do, I have to wake up around, I'm part of what we call the 5 a.m. Writers Club. So I have
mm,
to wake up before everybody else in the house wakes up, around 4 a.m., get myself together, come downstairs and start writing. Um, I like to write in writing sprints. So I usually do the Pomodoro method. So there's 20 minutes of writing, there's 5 minute break, another 20 minutes of writing, a 5 minute break. Um, so I'm kind of training my brain to try to get through things. Um, I do try to do a rough outline before I start. Um, Particularly when I'm on deadline. Just because deadlines move really quickly. I need to have a rough outline that I'm following so I can get from point A to point B. Um, Sometimes I'm Pinterest boards with my characters. Um, Say, hey, this is, or like inspiration cover, like this is what I imagine my cover will be. This is what I imagine my characters will look like. This is something I can use as a visual also.
oh, those are really good tips for people who are listening. That's cool. And I didn't know Pomodoro. What did you say that type of writing process was?
I hope I'm saying it right. Pomodoro.
Okay, I had not heard of that. That's cool.
It's really, it's the task thing. It isn't necessarily just writing. It's like it helps you get tasks done more efficiently.
Yeah.
And just it's being somebody who I do have ADHD also. Like I have to train my brain to do things like and
Yeah.
then schedule, and that's one way I've used to do.
I think that it's very helpful, like when I'm thinking about emails, right? I'm like, okay, you're going to read through these emails and you're going to answer this many. And then I have to tell myself, now you're going to go grade or work on your podcast or whatever. But I can't let the emails like dictate and take over. So it is interesting to like set a time and be like, this is how much time you have for emails. Then you have to leave it. Even if one just pops up new, you can't let it take you away. Although sometimes depends. If it's my boss, I'll go for it. But when you're thinking about as a child, what you wanted to be when you grew up or anything, did you always know you wanted to be a writer? Is there anyone who helped influence that in you or inspire you? And then how did you internally know to follow that for yourself?
Yes, I've always wanted to write. In fact, I was writing fan fiction before fan fiction was like they had a website for it. So it's just very much like I remember very early on reading Frog and Toad and writing myself into the Frog and Toad stories in second grade and giving them to my teacher instead of doing my spelling work. Um, but I always did. I think one of the biggest people that originally told me that I could be an author, I could be a writer, I could really make it happen was my fifth grade teacher, Mrs. James. And I dedicated the first book to her. And she's somebody who has stayed with me for a long time. I still talk to her. Um, and she's one of the first people who let me know that, your words mean something and you can really do this if you want to. So, she's probably one of the first that made me feel that way.
That's so cool.
Yeah, she's so wonderful.
It's
Um,
neat that you still have a relationship too. That just makes my heart warm.
I sent her the book when I first came, like when I first got it, I sent her with a note and she changed so many lives. So it's very important that she knows that this one was for her. Um, so yeah, I went to college and I did creative writing, English creative writing. And then I kind of strayed into literary fiction, because I was told, this is what real writers do. You don't write for children, that, you write these types of stories and
Oh,
the types of stories, right? So for a while, I wrote literary fiction for short stories and nonfiction pieces. Um, and then COVID hit, and I think, everybody started trying to figure out and take an introspective look at their lives and to say, what, actually brings me joy. And I went back to writing for children, and that was what I felt really brought me joy.
that's cool. It's cool that you thought about yourself and went for it. I don't really read a lot of novels. I more so read a lot of like informational text
Mhm.
or like travel articles, which is so not, in my creative writing classes in college, they were like, this isn't really what we do. So I get what you mean. It's like, but this is what I love. This is what I like. Oh, that's funny. Do you have any words of wisdom for us or any insight about, I mean, you did tell us one insight about publishing, that it takes a year for your book to get published. Anything else that authors should understand or people who are wanting to be published about the publishing process or once you hand your book over? Um, it was interesting that your publishing company came up with the hearts, but that you also agreed with it and liked it. So sometimes you want to open yourself and give space for others to help support your ideas. How much of the process is letting go once you hand the book over to them, and also things that you still need to do, like marketing yourself or
So this is always what I say in regards to when you're deciding what route you want to go when you're talking about traditional publishing versus self-publishing. Um, Traditional publishing is like letting your baby go off to college and saying, you're letting it go and you can be there to support, but it's not your final decision on. And that's very much how traditional publishing is because it is a business. Um,
Mhm.
you become part of a team. So, like I'm not the only reason, courtesy of Cupid, is it has the picture it has the that copy it has, or any edits, like there, all of that is a team effort. And it does take, I mean, writing is anything in publishing industry takes a fix. Um, but you have to come to the table knowing that your book is absolutely going to change in some way. It's not going to start the same way it ends. And that's okay. For me, it's always, I have a really lovely editor. She really does kind of see those holes and she makes a lot better. Like she fills in the holes. She's so like, she sees things that I didn't see before and we can work together collaboratively to try to
Mhm.
move those holes. So if you do not want anybody changing the manuscript, or if you want full agency on how your cover is going to look, full agency on certain characters or certain things, then it is probably best to be self-publishing. And that's what I tell people. Um, there's a lot of surprises in there. Like I said, like I did get agency. Like they definitely send over cover sketches and say, do you like this? What about this that you change? Do you think uh this will be okay? But my title changed. My original title was Stupid Cupid. My agent and I really liked it, but it changed. Like it changes because there's other things to look at when you're doing traditional publishing. How will the market see it? How will the librarians see it? How will the teachers take it? Is that something they'll be able to use? So all of that plays a factor um, in traditional publishing.
But
So
that's a good way of looking at it too, how you're saying it's a team effort, that the editor saw some gaps or things that she could um, help you with to explore. So I think I used to work for a literary agent and write. So I think that's a good way of looking at it, right? It's like, hey, this is a team. And whenever I was editing books for people or when I do, I always talk to them about it. Like, hey, have you thought about this part? It's not really saying the editor's not really saying do this, but it's more so helping you brainstorm and explore, right? So
yeah,
it's letting go of control, but people are there to support you. Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it.
it's 100% support. It's to me like courtesy. All of my books are 100% better um, because of editing. Like I would never want to just put a book out there by myself anymore without like an editor to look at it and sort like because they see things that you don't see
Yeah.
as the um, which is when I visit school to tell the same I tell the kids the same thing. I'm like, you get your first draft of your paper is not going to be perfect no matter how wonderful you think it is and how right you think you are. I said there you have to revise to get to that point. And I tell them I was like I revised. I Courtesy of Cupid was revised. What was it? 56 times.
Ooh, that's a good point that I can tell them. 56.
Huh.
Okay. Because I
It,
do tell them that too. Like, hey, you've got to go through your work several times. And if you're sick of looking at it, like,
yes.
won't other people be, right? Like, if you don't want to read it again and look at it again. Also, when I'm helping students write an essay isn't exactly fun, but they're creative writing as well. I'll sit next to them and have a conversation. I feel like there's more feedback while we're writing versus just giving handwritten notes and telling them to go off and do something. I really, if they're like, oh, does this paragraph look good? I ask them, like, okay, read it out loud to me so that they can self-edit and hear it. They're always like, I don't want anyone else to hear. I'm like, no one cares. Just read it out loud to me right now when I'm with you. And that helps as well for them to get trained in that, like reading it again, seeing it again. When you are thinking about like other people who want to be published or people who have a dream of being a writer, do you have any words of wisdom for them that you want to share?
Don't give up. I mean, that seems very cliche, but it's not that I have, and I'm not saying this to be like like to look down on myself, but I'm not it's not that I'm the best writer in the world, but I probably am one of the more stubborn ones. So you can strengthen your talent, you can strengthen all of that, but you have to have a thick skin if you want to be an author in this industry or any type of creative period. You have to have a thick skin because it doesn't matter who you are, rejection is going to be there. Rejection came from all of the biggest writers that we know today, but they didn't give up. And that's normally, you're going to miss 100% of your chances if you don't give up. So,
Yes, the only things I never want to like get to the end of my road and then look back and think, oh, I didn't do this, I didn't do that. That's my biggest thing is I don't want regrets, right? We're bound to have mistakes, but I don't want regrets. Not only are you like making sure that you are brave and you're also very determined. Like as a mother, you're also waking up in the morning at 4 a.m. and it's writing before anyone wakes up. You're finding when to work, right? And so I think all of that goes into that category of never giving up. That's really cool. How much effort you're putting into it. And I think as women too, we're always juggling, right? Like laundry, children. How do we fit it in? Like 4 a.m.? Like, bravo to you. That's awesome. And then what, or is there anything that you're working on next? Like this book is coming out, As You Wish is coming out in January. And then what's next for you? Have you started a new book? Do you give yourself a break?
I have a book coming out in 2026. It's my first official because this is still categorized as middle grade. It's my first young adult novel, so it's upper. It's a little bit older young adult. It is hasn't been announced yet, but it is a John Tucker Must Die retelling. Yeah. So it's older for older group of kids, and then there will be another young adult in 2026.
That's cool. Also, if it's for older students, the younger ones have already been reading your books and they're growing older. So that sounds perfect to me. I'm sure that all my students will be excited to see it as well. Anything else that you want to let us know before we wrap up today?
No, I'm just really excited to be here, and thank you for taking the time out to talk to me.
Yeah, of course.
Adore your students. So I
Yeah, I'll definitely play this for my students and show them. And
yeah,
then where can we find you? I know you're on Instagram. Are there any other platforms that we should look for you? And we can find your books anywhere at any market and bookstores, local bookstores.
my website is probably this www.nashaejones.com. That Instagram's the one I use the most right now because I'm trying to fill out whatever else is going to come up besides Instagram. So Instagram is probably the one that I'm most active on right now.
Okay, perfect. Well, I'll put all of those links in audience in the show notes so you can just go scroll down and they'll be at the very top so you can find her right away and go check out her Instagram. I love the marketing. It's so cool. Nashae, thank you so much for your time. I'm so excited to read your next book, As You Wish, and the next two coming out. So, audience, I hope that you had a great time. If you know anyone who is looking to be an author, inspired by books, loves to read, teachers, students, young adults, parents, all of these categories fit. So share, like, subscribe, share this podcast with them so that everyone can hear about Nashae and her books. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate your time.
Hi.